eres suficiente.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, well, like you mentioned, my name is Stella. I go by Stella Bella. And just to give you a little bit of my background, I am a sustainable fashion designer and I also do domestic production manufacturing, and I'm a facilitator for what I call healing arts. And it really started when me myself was going through a transition of healing. I don't like to say like the life crisis, but in reality, when as women we hit like our 40s, is when we really start taking shape in our minds and our bodies and a different way of living life, right? So getting close to that age is kind of like made me realize exactly what was it that I was going to be doing here, and what was my way of having my best life. But at the same time, you become a wise woman once your later years come, right? In Spanish, they do te vuelves señora, like you become a miss, But in reality, it's really just taking your life experience and making sure that you're leaving behind for somebody else to learn from your lessons. I don't want to say mistakes, but like your life lessons, because I don't think in reality nothing is a mistake. You really have to learn from your journey, right? But with that, came a lot about like me learning about myself and the different patterns that I kept repeating when it came to relationships. Not only the relationship that I had with myself, but, the relationship with my parents, the relationship with friendships, the relationship with significant others that I wanted to be part of my life then, right? And, but with that, I've always been a relationship kind of girl. I've always felt like I needed to have somebody in my life. And not until I was older did I learn that a lot of those patterns was because I suffered from abandonment. I suffered from childhood trauma. I suffered from not feeling enough because of the different ways of how my life shaped since I was a child. I'm an immigrant. I come from Guatemala. So just having that disconnection from my parents at an early age put me in a path of not feeling that I was worthy of having somebody there for me at all times. And with that came that I was looking for my father's attention and my mother's affection and my mother's approval, and just the family dynamics of being an immigrant and making sure that you create the dreams not only for yourself but the dreams a reality from the people that came before you. In my case, it would be my parents. And for me to have that, being the youngest of five originally, it always gave me that sense of like, I'm not going to make the mistakes that my siblings did, if you wanted to call it that, right? So I've always strived for the best. I always want to make sure that I needed to have grades and I needed to pass the grades. And even though now that I've been learning about myself and learning and learning that I had AD, really makes me feel in a way like, well, okay, it wasn't that I was lazy. It wasn't that didn't want to pay attention. No, it was just the way that I'm a creative. So my mind worked differently. You know what I mean? And that's in every aspect. But, when it came to relationships, I always felt that I needed to prove that I could keep a relationship. And unfortunately, because of the way that as Latinas are shaped and are brainwashed, I want to say, that you needed to fit a mold. You needed to be a certain age and have a career. And then after you do the career, you had to find a husband and make sure that you got married and make sure that you had kids and, do all of the things that are supposed to be to make you a complete person, right? To make you a señora correctly. But in my mind, it was different. Like I saw it like differently. I wanted that so bad, you know what I mean? So I kept on being in relationships that I, in a way, allowed for that person to disrespect me by lying to me, by cheating on me, by belittling me. But I will continue to do it because I was so aferrada. I was so like making sure that this is going to work no matter what. Yeah, yeah, no, no. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And even if your life is miserable, even if you're not happy, a lot of the things is like, oh, we'll do it for the kids, or we do it for because what are people gonna say? You know what I mean? And then I just continue to be in the relationship, and things happen in my family where one of my sisters got really ill, and then after a while, like that person an ultimatum, after being with him for 7 years, I told him that I needed to find out myself, and I needed to once again, feel the mold of like, are we gonna get married, or what's happening here, you know what I mean? And he decided that he wasn't ready, that he still needed to think about it. And that's when I said, okay, well, I'm out. If you, by this time, don't know that after 7 years, I'm the woman for you, then I'm never gonna be that woman. And because of everything that I was going in my personal life, in my family life, I decided to leave that relationship completely. Just break it and move on. But during those times, you also become vulnerable in the aspect of once again trying to find that support system and trying to find what you need to find on your own for yourself, on your being. You tend to give it away to somebody else to try to find it on somebody else. Yeah, and after leaving that relationship, I had a best friend that we had known each other since we were little. We actually dated when I was like 15, 16 it was like a summer fling, you know what I mean? I had gone back to Guatemala and I met him because he was like the brother of one of my elementary classmates. But we became friends, and throughout the years we continued to be really good friends. And it was kind of like my escape of the way that I found that support on him that I needed during that time. And I felt like I needed that guidance, I needed that support, I needed somebody to understand. And one thing left to another where he really supported me. He pretty much dropped everything and left everything to be my comfort. Me, I was heartbroken, not only because of my relationship of 7 years, but I was also heartbroken because I had no idea where my family drama or problem or whatever you wanted to call it was going to lead me to, right? And because I always wanted to be the good daughter, the good person that doesn't go out of like where my family wanted me to be. But that was the one way that I said, you know what? I'm out. I disconnected myself. I dropped everything. I left my career. I left my apartment. I left everything I had built in LA for the past 20 plus years then, and just got one luggage and left to Florida. I left everything. I left the 3-year old niece that I had under my custody. I left my sister that was in a hospital in a coma. I left pretty much everything and said, I'm going to start fresh and it's going to be just me. And and then that's how it ended. Of course, during that time, I came back home. My family talked to my ex, wanted for me to get convinced again that he was like my guy. He proposed to me. He took me to the beach and had like candles and very romantic, like setup going. And he gives me the ring, and the ring like literally just like falls out of my finger, like nothing. Like it didn't fit. It didn't like nothing. And then I was just stubborn. I was just stubborn. I was just like awakened to the point that no, this is not gonna work. He doesn't even know my ring size. Like this is not gonna work. And I stayed true to my feeling, and I stayed true to what I was feeling at that time. And I left. No questions asked. Yeah, no questions asked. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And don't get me wrong, I was devastated. I was heartbroken. I was confused. I'm like, what am I doing? This guy comes from a good family. He's a very religious person. Like me thinking in my head that those were the things that made a man well, you know what I mean? But it was beside the point that he would cheat on me with any walking broom with a skirt, like anybody that walked by was always like me finding out that he was cheating and me, okay, let's break up. But he comes and will tell me something and then we'll go back again. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. This was the second relationship. Yeah. Like I said, I knew him since we were 15. So we were best friends for a really long time, me and him. And when we started our relationship, it, it started like very fast where, we pretty much were together and we pretty much moved in together because I wanted that break from my family. And even though they always wanted me to, get out of the house married and having all that stuff, I ended up being rebellious and I said, no, I'm gonna move out. We moved to Texas together, and then we moved to Key West, Florida first. And then we came back to LA, and then we went to Texas. But during that time, he was very insecure of me because he knew I had just finished a 7-year relationship that he knew everything about because he was one of my best friends. So whenever the ex would cheat on me, he would be the one like, oh, he cheated on me one more time and I forgave him one more time. You know what I mean? So, but it started again where he started being unfaithful to me. And by this time, I was in a different state. So I was afraid, I was ashamed of people saying, like, oh, well, that's what happened, after you turn down this guy that proposed to you and everybody wanted you to marry him. So it was kind of like, I felt like, oh, they're just going to think it's my karma. You know what I mean? We continued to try the relationship. He continued to always like belittle me, always saying like comments here and there, like, well, he was very into fitness and working out and having that physical body, right? Me, I like my bread. I like my pan con café, you know what I mean? I like my cafecito and pan, like, and it was even that culturally that's nurturing. At least I like to know that. I don't know if it's scientifically proven, but coffee can be healing as well. I think. And as a Guatemalan, if you have cafe con pan, it's even more. That's like an aspirin, right? And it was always like, oh, well, that bread is gonna make you look fat, and those arms that you hate so much, it's that bread that's making them like that. So it was always kind of like very passive aggressive, like comments, but I never realized how shameful it was when it came to me. and how it affected me in a way of like not even enjoying a meal, because if I eat one more bite, I'm just gonna see that look of like, oh, well, you're doing it again. You know what I mean? So during that time, once again, I decided I came to LA. I was living in Tampa then. And I didn't know anybody there. It was just me and him. And I was not in my career. I was working for the Tampa Bay Buccaneer restaurants. And so I was not even like doing anything in the fashion industry. And one time I decided, you know what? I'm just gonna go back home. I left everything. I left my car, my home, furnished, and everything. I got one luggage and I bought a one-way ticket back to Los Angeles. And I left everything behind, everything. I came to couch surf in one of my sister's houses, and I just, got my old job back and was commuting 2-3 hours to go to work. But I left a very important being with him. That was my chocolate lab, Lola Bella. It was a dog that we had gotten together. And during the midst of that, I already had by that time, it was 3 months, 4 months had passed. I had already gotten an apartment. My best friend had a duplex house. So she was living in the back house and I was living in the front house. And it's crazy for me to tell this story because, to tell you the truth, is the first time that I've said this out loud. And it's the first time that I'm actually opening up and being recorded of telling this story. But I feel that it's important. So after I moved back, I couldn't stop thinking about Lola, and I couldn't stop thinking about how important the dog was in my life. And with that comes him again and telling me, well, she misses you a lot. Why don't I drive cross country with her and then we can try it again? Like, you can have Lola and we can try and see if this relationship will work. And once again, me thinking like, I don't want people to say like, "Ugh, one more failed relationship, or like, there goes Stella again, like not being true to what she's supposed to be doing, right?" So I welcome him back. More for the love of the dog, I want to say, now that I think about it. But I still welcome him back, and we continue. Yes. And we continue to do life. He comes, he moves in with me. By this time, once again, I'm like building everything because in reality, I was the breadwinner of that whole relationship. Yeah, and then she comes to my life. I'm happy that she's with me again. Lola is just like loving LA and everything is flowing well. But I was part of this group that we will all go to church together. So we will go to church. After church, we will get together, we will hang out. Like, it was always like maybe like 5 or 6 couples that we will always be together. And we will do things here and there, other activities outside of church, but we will always hang out. So to make the long story short, through my best friend's husband, that it was the person that was like our neighbor, I find out that there was things between them that didn't look quite right. It's like those things, like we say in Spanish, las cosas buenas que se miran malas, like the good things that are good, but they look bad. So he started finding like little things here and there of why they were hanging out more, even when the couples were not together, they were still hanging out together. And they were getting coffee. And since we were neighbors, I mean, it was just like a feet away from each other. And her husband and me, we will go out and go to work, and they will stay later and hang out. So come to find out, she was having extramarital relationship with my partner. And at that time, she had convinced me to marry him in order for me to give him a legal status here in the United States. She convinces me to marry him because that will help him, get his citizenship and get everything going here in the States. And she's like, you can just get married. And then once you give him everything, then, he can get a better job. And then you guys have the big wedding that you guys want to have. And sure enough, Stella's like, all right, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. So I married him, hiding it from all of my family. Okay. My family did not know none of this. They knew that we were engaged, but they didn't know that I had gotten married, hiding it. And so sure enough, I find some receipt because he had been unfaithful to me before. I already kind of like been there, done that, where I knew kind of like when a guy is hiding things. So I kind of had like the unfaithful radar of like, okay, he's doing something fishy. You know what I mean? And sure enough, they say that when you look, you find. And I found a receipt. And her husband told me that, yeah, sure enough, like he knew that it was for sure that they were having an affair. And doing that, I went into like investigative mode, right? So I changed everything, and I would tell thing that I know will get back to her. Like, for instance, I would tell her, the vecinos are like, I think they're going to getting back together because they've been like, I've been seeing them talking to each other and they kind of go back to the house. And then I would tell her, like, oh my God, girl, I met this guy and he's so good looking and I gave him my number. And she's like, but what about your man? And she's like, well, he's not even here. So he's not gonna know, you know what I mean? So then it will become a constant fight with him because he's like finding out that I'm talking supposedly with somebody else. And the same thing with her, saying that she was back with her husband. And during this time, she had switched churches. I helped her like move, and she will be crying and crying like in her church. And I'm thinking, girl, but why are you leaving your husband after 15 years? Like I was still not putting the two and two together. You know what I mean? Until I did. It's like, okay, so here I am switching churches, helping her move without even knowing that she was doing all of this because she was cheating on her husband with my husband. And and you know what? After everything kind of came, we were having dinner. She was already in her new apartment, and I didn't make it seem nothing. You know what I mean? And it was so telenovela. Like, it was so, like, drastic where I go and I'm, like, studying the questions that they're going to ask me about, like, him and everything that you have to go through the whole immigration process and all that. And it's like, we have known each other since we were 15, and, like, we had letters and everything since way back then. So it was like a legitimate marriage, you know what I mean? Like, I really wanted to be married to this guy. And we start practicing the questions. And growing up with telenovelas, of course, you have to throw in your little drama, right? So I kept on asking them. I'm like, well, I when the judge asked me like what side of the side does my husband sleep in and who gets up first and blah blah blah, all these questions, routine questions that they ask you, I think I already know all of the answers. I go, but one answer that I don't know is what's going to happen if the judge asks me, how long has my best friend been fucking my husband? What am I going to say? And just like that, they turn like way like hell. And I just get out of that house. She starts like, he's like, what are you talking about? Like, how can you come to my house and accuse me and blah, blah, blah. She's like, start defending herself. He walks behind me. Please forgive me. She doesn't mean anything. It was a mistake, blah, blah, blah. Like he automatically admitted it. And through the days, I told them, don't come home. Find a place to live. I am not going to accept you back into my house. So through the days, he starts convincing back. Now he's getting brainwashed, I guess, by her or by somebody, and starts like accusing me and telling me that they're going to tell on me. And they're going to say that the reason why I married him was this and this and that. And I can lose my citizenship because I'm marrying this guy and I'm going to divorce him now without even finalizing the papers. So a month after I get married, I start the process of getting divorced. And all of this, I'm living it by myself because I cannot tell my other girlfriends because my other girlfriends, to begin with, they didn't like him. Girlfriends that I've known for a long time, they automatically would tell me like, girl, what the fuck are you doing with this man? Like, you're not even yourself. Like, you changed so much for this guy that is so papa sin sal. You know what I mean? He's just a bland man that really takes away your life. But you don't see it. I was so obsessed by having the perfect relationship that I didn't see that I was losing myself in the process, right? And it was, yeah, yeah, yeah. And through through there, of course, I had to move out. I had to start again. And now I'm looking for apartments with a 70-pound chocolate lab now it's easier to find places with a dog in LA. But back then it was like almost impossible because there was just not that in LA. They didn't have rooms. They didn't consider a pet the family being also. But I did it, and I started all over again. I had to move, and I had to like find a way. But it was just so heartbreaking for me because it wasn't only him, that he was a childhood friend of mine, and because I knew that he had done it before, so I wasn't so surprised. But it was her. It was also losing your best friend, the confident, the one that knew secrets of me, the one that helped me through the last relationship. It was the times that we spent together, the times that we had talked to each other. I mean, it was such a violation of my being that it was just so hard for me at that time to overcome.
Yeah.
Because it was a betrayal from two of the very important people in my life, and not only them, but a lot of people around me, because it started questioning me, like, who else knew? Who else me vio la cara without me knowing? No, I didn't say anything. And after I finished that relationship, it was just this group of people that it was my church people. It was my friends that I always used to communicate with. It was family. It was so many group that it was just me like taking the queen of the chest and just saying, okay, you're out. So I literally just took myself out of the equation. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't tell anybody. All people knew was that him and I were not together, and that her and I don't know what had happened there because nobody knew. Our mutual friends, I never mouthed her or him. Like, I never said anything. I don't know if it was shame. I don't know if it was like I didn't want to hear that I told you so. I don't know at that
Yeah.
time what it was, but I was so heartbroken. I just wanted to start anew without giving any explanation or any way of people feeling sorry for me. Like, I didn't want that.
I get that. I think a lot of times we tend to kind of suffer in silence through these things, because we feel ashamed, like somehow we caused this to happen to us,
Mm-hmm.
and there's feeling of I should have known better, or they're going to think this is what happens to her because of blah, blah, blah. And so we carry these things. I didn't tell anybody in my family what was going on at the end of my marriage and how bad it got because they loved him and they knew him good. And I didn't want to damage their view of him. And I suffered in silence, girl. And then looking back now, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had been more open
Yeah.
with my family, my friends, because I think had I been, they would have helped me get out sooner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wouldn't have stayed as long as I stayed. I stayed longer than I should have because I carried everything alone. And I was afraid that I couldn't do it with two kids on my own. I was afraid, even though he was always a good provider. I'm never going to take that from him because he was always a good provider. That doesn't necessarily translate to being a good husband or a good father, but I always made great money, and I was always paying for all of our vacations and all of our stuff, like the nice life. And so, I don't know why I thought I wouldn't be able to afford it. And look, now I left. We were living in Texas. I moved us to California. We live by the beach. I mean, we're going to the beach all the time. Our life is very different. And I honestly wouldn't have thought that I was capable of it. But, maybe if I had talked to somebody and had reached out instead of going through it all in silence,
Mm-hmm.
um, I would have gotten out sooner and I would have gotten the help that I needed to start over sooner. I wasn't even aware that there are resources I could have used. I mean, I did everything on my own. I sold everything to move to California. Everything. My son jokes about it because I sold our hammers, drills.
Hey, girl, whatever it takes. And it's the resilience of us women that sometimes we take for granted, or sometimes we don't see how strong we are until we see it in the other chapter. And and we look back and you're like, wow, like I think back on myself in that experience, automatically with him, I didn't want to know anything about him. But when it came to her, I felt more like I'm not gonna let this dude like destroy
Ruin
like
our
our friendship, you know. So I wrote like this like 3-page letter to her and telling her, you know, like if that's the relationship, if she wants to keep that relationship, I mean, she can have him, you know what I mean? But I treasure more the friendship that I had with her, and that's something that I wasn't willing to lose. Like I automatically forgave her right there and then. You know what I mean? And it took a while for me to forgive him because I don't know. I feel like sometimes you tend to blame yourself, and sometimes you are at fault for taking that approach, for taking that much without putting limitations and letting somebody dictate how you're supposed to live or how you're supposed to be. You know what I mean? Because you get lost sometimes when you're in a relationship. But I had a really, really sincere talk with myself. And I said that to myself, to the universe, to God, to a higher being, that I was not going to allow that in my life anymore. And that whatever I needed to change, I was willing to do it. But I wanted to make sure that whoever came into my life again, I needed to be this and that and that. And I mean, I described it to the T. And thank God the universe listened, and that has been a path that has been healing for me. And not until I've been in this um, healthy relationship with my current partner did I learn that I needed to change a lot of things about me. And I went into this quest of finding who Stela Perez was, you know, and who was it that I was here to be and become, and how those experiences was going to shape me in a way of me being the testimony of talking about my experiences, not to shame them, not to put them in you did this to me, you know what I mean? Not to do anything like that, because it's over, you know what I mean? We all got like our own sense of our path in our life, and I want to say that it was for the best. You know, looking back, I just laugh about it now. I'm like, hey, it's a good chapter to my story, and a good chisme too. But doing those times of realization and trying to get to know me by alternative medicines, you know, not only ancestral medicine, not only healing art, not only finding my way again, because always listening to other people in other ways, I just felt like I was so traumatized in so many different ways without me even knowing. You know,
Yeah.
just the simple fact of this is my natural curly hair. You know what I mean? And I never used to wear my hair like this. I always used to straighten it, because you always try to fit into a mold of what
Yeah.
society wants you to be and how you want to be. When I started
Yeah.
finding out like the small percentage of people that have curly hair in
Yeah.
comparison to the people that have straight hair, I was like, this is a blessing. You know what I mean? This nappy hair that sometimes gets in the way and doesn't stay the way that it's a beauty that I have. And
And it's your spiritual connection.
yeah, exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
me utilizing that, utilizing the fact that I don't hold anything bad for that experience. Instead, it took me into this rabbit hole of me also finding out like what I needed for me and what I needed for my family lineage, and doing the 23andMe and finding out like the composition of all of the genes from people in the world that make me.
Yeah.
I found a lot of family secrets that probably were not supposed to come into light, but you know, because things are supposed to be
Mhm.
into light when it has to. And it did, you know, doing that transfer, I found two sisters, and in that aspect, it came to be where a lot of the story, or my story per se, had been a repetitive story from my family lineage, and of the same, of
Gen-
abuse, of lying, of cheating. You know, my father, it think in this aspect, that person that was always unfaithful towards my mother, And my mother
Mhm.
accepted that, and I'm not here to shame them either, but I am here that the constellations when it comes to family and the repetition of story when it comes to family, it's real.
It is real, and you keep repeating that generational trauma until it's addressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you address it, then the next generation repeats it or the next one. So that is something that is very real. And I had to deal with that as well. My dad, God love him. I love my dad, amazing dad. He passed last year, but I have amazing memories of him. But he was unfaithful to my mom, and she accepted it as well. She never. I think it was just a part of life in that culture, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just, and I found myself repeating these patterns where I would be attracted to these bad boys, right? I would be attracted to these bad boys, and it was a pattern that I repeated, and it's something that I had to recognize, and I had to really focus to not repeat now white men with a bunch of tattoos anymore. That was something that I loved dearly, but I recognized that at least for now, it's something. No, I was attracting a specific kind of man that I don't really want, and intentional. The man that I'm dating now is, very, very different. He's still white, but he is very, very different. And no tattoos, very fancy, just very different from what I'm used to. But I think I needed that. And I think it has to be that intentionality in order to address these generational traumas so you're not continuously repeating them
Yeah.
and can move kind of.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's not
Yeah.
only
That's
that the person that you allowed in your life is also your own patterns, your own belief. I did start that relationship not trusting and being over jealous and overprotective until I was made to lie that, why would I be somebody that I don't like them being towards me? And it was when I
yeah.
realized that I'm like, wow, yeah, you're right. Like with my ex partners, it was always like, where are you at? Who are you with? When are you coming? Blah, blah, blah. It was never the place that I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to go out with my family. I'll be back in 5 hours. And then trust that that's what it's going to be without every hour, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you guys up to? Blah, blah, blah. It's the fact that I didn't put that on my own of saying, I don't want this to be in the aspect of me not being true to myself and me forgetting what I am, who I am, and who I want to become. Because life, I'm 47 now, but I feel that life, it's a continuous lesson. And sometimes you're giving the same lesson over and over and over until you finally realize, like, no, this is the last time that I'm going to go through this rock and stomp on it and trip myself on this rock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You gotta be conscious of what is it that you're gonna do. And when it comes to therapy, that's really when I started this journey. But now you have to find a way of what is it that is gonna heal you in the aspect of you. I cannot tell you that I'm a church kind of person. I'm not. I believe, but for me to go to a church every single Sunday, that just doesn't do it for me. But for
Yeah.
me to go hiking every single Sunday, for me to like do somatic stretches, for me to do, healing art, for me to do dance routines and movement of my body, that's healing for me. You know what I mean? For me to find also ways in my ancestral lineage when it comes to cacao, when it comes to, rapé, when it comes to ayahuasca, I'm willing to do things out of the norm because not only because I want to find answers, but it also for me to be the vessel of a forever learner so I can be a forever teacher. And for
Yeah.
me to find the Stelita in her early 20s that wanted that perfect relationship, that wanted that perfect career, that wanted all of that perfect boxes to be aligned with what society, family, and people wanted me to be. But for me to continue not losing who I am and be able to say to somebody, you know what? When I was your age, because I'm at that age now, when I was your age and I was 20, and the guy lied to me for the first time, I should have been able to leave him right there and then with no questions asked because life is too short.
I love your story. I think there's so much more to explore here with the topics of spirituality and the ayahuasca and things like that. So I think I'd like to have you back for a separate episode
Yeah.
where we just do the spiritual side of things.
Yeah.
and get a little more into that, I think. I really want to thank you. This was incredible. This was a great conversation. I think your story is very moving in telling how so many of us have to start over, right? You had to leave everything behind once and then again. And I think that that is the case for a lot of us where we find ourselves starting over in these situations.
Yeah.
So I just really want to thank you.
Of
Thank you for
course.
sharing your
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. I feel
It
that
was,
love transcends everything. And
yeah,
I tell my story because I own it and because I love it. Believe it or not,
yeah,
during that time was a very dark time in my life, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't.
I love that
I wouldn't.
because that we think, they're destroying us, they're really turning out to be our biggest blessings.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. Yeah,
I thought the divorce is going to destroy me, and I'm living a better life than I ever imagined. So
same here.
kudos to
That
you.
relationship left me with a wonderful dog that I cherish. And she came along with me for almost 16 years out of my life. And after that relationship was over, I stayed with her and she continued to teach me so many things. And believe it or not, everything has a purpose. And I want to say that the purpose in that story was for me to have Lola Bella. And because of the way that dogs are and animals are towards us, that teach us to have unconditional love and to love.
Yeah.
I feel that that's what the given was of that experience. For me, not to ever think that friendships cannot happen again, because I still love all of my friends dearly, including her. I still pray for her and I still love her. And the same thing as him. You know what I mean? They're part of my blueprint. But for me, now is the aspect, because we do hold trauma in our being, in our nervous system. For me, is now making sure that throughout my whole life, I'm not going to let that anger, that resentment, that betrayal continue to manifest in my being, because it doesn't belong to me.
Yes, I love that. I love that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking time to share your story. I definitely want to talk more about the ayahuasca, and like I said, maybe do an episode centered around energy workers and our work with trauma in this field and generational trauma.
Sounds
So I'm
good.
gonna I'll reach out on that. We'll get that going. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I look forward to visiting your studio.
Anytime.
Okay, thank you guys.
Ciao.
Until next time.